Good. On the last occasion, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I spoke about closing events of Ice Age, because majority of human evolution unfolded on the background of Ice Age. Ice Age made in Africa a drought period, which launched the first migration to the direction of Asia, to the direction of Europe, and finally it started the chain of migration to switch. We are on the screen. Finally to Americas and Australia. But if we try to describe the history of humankind, we have to focus at least 3 revolutions. The first revolution, it was revolution of agriculture. The second revolution, revolution of cities, urban revolution. And the last one, industrial revolution. In the frame of this course, we can speak about agrarian revolution and the urban revolution. Look at the agrarian revolution. In the modern historiography, named agrarian revolution, agrarianization. It's not so easy to spell, but the basic meaning of change of term, because a revolution somehow, a short process, like a French Revolution, like a Bolshevik Revolution, like a revolution generally a short event, short-term event. But the agrarianization unfolded more 1,000 years long process. Therefore, it's not a real revolution, it's a rather evolution. Agrarianization means evolutionary nature of appearance of agriculture. If we are looking at the process of agrarianization, appearance of agriculture, we can separate a different subsistence system. Subsistence system means a creation of food, creation of basic infrastructure of survival. The first one, a hunter-gatherer community. On the majority of human evolution, a basic subsistence system of human clans, like you remember the how the name is that, War for the Fire, the movie. It's a hunter-gatherer community. The first milestone of appearance of agriculture, a forest fellow. Everybody know which is the fellow? It's a fellow for Hungarian student Ugor. It's a fellow mean area which not used for agrarian activity. It's area of reconstruction, free reconstruction of area. Forest fellow mean the 2 application for agrarian activity, the first and the second occasion for agrarian area, it spent more than 15 or 25 years. Why forest fellow? Because the term between 2 agrarian using quite enough long for recovery of forest vegetation. 20 or 25 years. If enough long term for growing up even a forest. Therefore, the rhythm of reusing of land, it's very long. The second one, bush fallow. Bush is a smaller one, a smaller plants, shorter the cycle between 2 agrarian using, and the short fallow, this is the rotation system, 2-field or 3-field system, it's possible, you know. Annual cropping, it's somehow, annual cropping means a rotation system. No fallow period, only some months. And finally, the multi-cropping, it's continuous using of arable land. For example, around the industrial area, it's no time for using for natural recovery the soil, apply a chemical fertilizer. Therefore, it's very interesting in the modern time, majority of soil, not a real soil, but under chemotherapy. Because no time for natural recovery for the soil, pushing into fertilizers. Okay, but which is the most interesting step? The most interesting and the most important step, stepping from hunter-gatherer to the early phase of agriculture. My next question, why perform this step to the direction of agriculture? Very interesting and very difficult to find a real answer. Why? Because there are two basic concepts of disciplines. Look at the 19th century. When the disciplines like geography, like history, like mathematics, like physics appeared in the 19th century, the basic concept of science separate the problem, the subject of science, and the scholar. This is the subject, I am the scholar, looking out of problem. Look at, for example, ethnographer. If somebody, you know which is the ethnography. It's a science of lifestyle, of community in real time and in the quite not so far past. Okay, look at ethnographer. Ethnography appeared in the 19th century. This is the classical concept. Separate the subject and the observer. And the ethnographer interested for the community of Bushmen, you know, living in the Kalahari Desert in South Africa. It's Bushmans named themselves Kungs, like the Hungarians. Probably you know, Hungarians name themselves Magyar. Therefore, the foreign people use a different name for naming Hungarians. This is the same situation. Bushman living in the Kalahari Desert, its self-naming is a Kung. It's a Kung. Okay. If I am an ethnographer and interesting for the Bushmans, the first step, I am going to the library and read the most important information about the Bushmans, which published other scholars. And the next step, I describe my experiences, travel to the Kalahari Desert, meet with the persons of the tribe, and travel back to Hungary and write articles. This is the ethnography in the style of the 19th century. But in the 20th century appeared anthropology. You know which is the anthropology? A little bit same that ethnography, but the methodology of research basically different. Why? Because the anthropologists' methods basically different. According to anthropologists like Richard Borchely, American anthropologist, the key element of the methods living together. Travel through the Kalahari Desert and living together with the Bushmans for 1 to 3 years. Because this is the real research, not going and going back, living together. For example, it's possible, I told to you, worked in the Central European University. Former time was in Budapest, but moved to Vienna recently. And I had one English colleague who graduated in the East London University and later in the 70s traveled to Budapest and told to the colleagues, sociologists and anthropologists colleagues, would like to specialize the Hungarian Gypsy community. And received an address, traveled to eastern part of Hungary, and lived together with the local Gypsy community for 3 years. This is the strategy of anthropologists. If somebody living together, some community, able to learn more deep knowledges. Okay, Richard Borchely, it's an American, is a little bit dangerous. A little bit dangerous because I saw in the National Geographic channel one story that American anthropologists travel to Brazil, to the tropical forest area in the Amazonas, river Amazonas, and became a member, a local tribe. And finally realized after half year it's a cannibal community and had to eat meat of human because this was the condition living together. Therefore, living together and apply the methodology of anthropology a little bit dangerous. Okay, very interesting. It's not cannibal, a Bushman community live together. And Richard Borchely, it happened in the 60s, in the 20th century, and he was the first person who described a natural community, living according to style of hunting-gathering. Only two communities living recently according to lifestyle subsistence system of hunting-gathering. Inuit community, Eskimos, in northern part of Canada, and Bushmans. A lot of prejudice, idealist prejudice about the people living according to style of hunting-gathering. My first guess, a little bit far from the topic, but we will return. Recently, according to your opinion, how many percent of people die for violence? A car accident is violence, it's a homicide is violence. Recently, in the modern society, how many percent of people die for violence? How many percent? You have to tell.
In percentage or?
Percent. How many percent for violence?
I would guess 1 in 3. No, 1 in 3 in 10, 30%.
3%? 3%.
3%.
Okay.
10%.
10%?
20.
20?
Yeah, 15.
15. 1%. Only 1%. Why? Because in the media, TV, journals, if something happened in Australia, it's a homicide, or Indonesia, or China, it's a world news, became information for everybody. Look at, for example, before the modern time, if somebody killed in local community, no news even on the neighborhood. I remember, for example, I came from the traditional society. My father told to me that using a knife on the pocket, it was a normal in the traditional world. And for example, in the ball, in the local ball, in the dancing occasion, it's quite a typical, it's picking one to other. But if we are looking at trajectory of modernization from the traditional time to the recent time, two processes we can follow. The first one, professionalization of violence. Therefore, in the hunting-gathering community, each people, look at the Indian movies, in the Western movies in United States, each male, adult male, a warrior. But look at recently, even the army, it's a professionalized army. And the people who commandos, member of the commando or soldier, specialize to the violence. But in the traditional time, everybody used the violence. And if we are looking at trajectory of modernization, this is the trajectory of taming. It's a trajectory of taming. And the first phase in the Bushman community, 1/3 of people, 30% of people were victims of violence. For tribal violence or the lion, it's quicker compared with the humans. Therefore, in the traditional time, very high the rate of violence. If we are looking at trajectory of modernization, decrease rate of violence, for example, in the European Middle Ages, if a father of the family would like to kill his wife, it's possible. It's possible. No punishment. In the first milestone of the modern time, in the 15th century, prohibited for the father of household killing the member of his household. And step by step, recently, in the modern time, prohibited. How the name is, it's a legal punishment. It's prohibited. But the people in the modernization trajectory decreased the rate of violence. But recently, it's a medializing of the violence. For example, switch on the TV series, a lot of violence. But this is somehow, it's not a real practice in our life. In my life, for example, but I came from the eastern part of Hungary, last time why I punched one other people, I was 16 years old. It's happened more than 3 decades. Therefore, in the normal life of people, no, it's a part of violence. Okay, one, it's moderate rate of violence. The second information, how many days necessary to work for survival? From 7 days. How many days in the Kalahari Desert had to work Bushman people for survival? How many days? 7? Every day?
Yeah,
7? 7? 2 days! Even the Kalahari Desert, no private property. No private property. Look at the outfit of them. Not necessarily collecting, for example, SUV or large swimming pool. Not necessary. Very moderate private property. But only 2 days. 2 days. You remember the story of losing of Garden Eden. Garden Eden. When started the agrarian society, necessary to work 6 days. Only for recovery left the Sunday, or Muslim, it's a Friday, I remember, or the Jews community, the Saturday. Therefore, only 1 day for recovery. Look at, even in the Kalahari Desert, 2 days for survival. 2 strategy, hunting for the men, and gathering for the older people, children and the women. And very interesting, it's possible, I told to you, there is a evolutionary psychology. You know, evolutionary psychology. A psychology, one direction, one branch of the psychology, which try to describe behavior of human from the evolution. Because majority of human society and the human evolution unfolded in the traditional time. And which is the strategy of women? Hunting, gathering, walking on the plain area in the desert. There is some mushrooms. It's good. It's not good. Bad. Walking. There is a good fruit. It's not good. Good. I will return later. This is the strategy of shopping. And look at the male hunting. It's walking very slowly to the game, to the animal, and hunting very quick. It's kill and bring at home. This is the shopping strategy of the male. It's possible not true, but it's interesting approach. Okay, first, very high rate of violence. The second one, it's very comfortable lifestyle, the subsistence system. And the last one, the last question, which is the logic of selection of the leader? Which personal skills necessary for the elect for the leader of the clan or tribe? Which kind of the people became politicians? Which is the most important personal peculiarity of the people who became the leader of the clans of Bushmen? Strong or powerful or rich? Which is the most important personal peculiarity?
I would say like wisdom. So wisdom.
Wisdom, yeah.
So the oldest man.
Not wisdom is important, but not the key factor. Because the wisdom much more in the personal peculiarity of the shaman, the priest. Because he's the chancellor or make a suggestion for the leader. Head of clan, which is the most important personal peculiarity of head of clan. No private property, not necessary to gathering a fortune. Confidence. The people reliable, make and take reliable person. A confidence. This is the most important. In ideal case, this should be the logic of election of politician. A confidence, a reliable person. Okay, look at the next step. If we are looking how change the subsistence system hunter-gatherer to forest fellow, why made around 10,000 years ago? The answer, because some area, the number of community of clans change between 40 to 60%. It's a quite small community. And very interesting, I taught to you evolutionary psychology. According to evolutionary psychology, even recently, the closed circle, look at, for example, Facebook or Twitter or I don't know, the social media, the closed circle, it's changed between 40 to 60%. Like clans in the traditional times. Okay, and it's great danger that very close relatives living together. And solve this problem in the traditional time, adolescent women or adolescent men had to leave the community. Therefore, this was the rotation for avoiding DNA problems. Okay, but the question is why turn to the direction of agrarian activity? The answer that some area, look at, for example, Egypt or Mesopotamia, a circumscribed area, closed area. Look at, for example, Egypt. Mediterranean Sea, northward, eastward, Red Sea, westward, a Sahara Desert, and southward, a tropical forest of Sudan. Closed area. Look at, for example, Mesopotamia. It's a Eurasian mountains, Syrian desert, Persian or Arabic Gulf, and the Mediterranean Sea. A closed area. After some level of overpopulation, necessary change a lifestyle to the direction of agrarianization, agrarian activity. Why? Because agrarian activity, 50-fold higher carrying capacity. On the same area, 50-fold more people able to live. Look at, for example, Indus Valley, China, northern part of China, in the area of Huanghe. It's a closed area. Each source area of agrarian activity, closed area. Look at, for example, Andes and Pacific Ocean. In the Maya area, it's a closed area. Mountain area, and other side, a Mexican Bay. Closed area. Therefore, the most important triggering effect, you know which is the trigger? Trigger is a trigger of the shotgun. if it's launched some process in consequence of overpopulation, no way to stop it. And the agrarian activity 50-fold increased the carrying capacity, increased the population. Like a nuclear explosion, it's launched the wave of migration. If we are looking at evolution, very important to calculate two ways of evolution. Biological evolution, you know, which is the biological evolution. Biological evolution, according to generally accepted view, it's closed. Recently, no biological evolution. Why? Because too large the community. Recently, the human population, recently in the last week, reached the 8 billion. 8 billion. Like an ocean. In the ocean launched one wave, so large the surface, it became smaller, 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 smaller. Returning to the middle, returning to the average. Recently too large, because the last great biological evolution happened 60 or 70,000 years ago. Because it's possible, you remember in two lectures before, I spoke about a population of humankind. It's decreased to 5,000. Whole of Africa, 5,000. In small community, a positive mutation may or might strengthen. But in large community, no biology, it's frozen down, a biological evolution. But there is a need. There is a need for biological evolution. You know the Marvel movies, X-Men. It's different special magical peculiarities. But recently, no, too large the community. But speed of social evolution increased in the not modern time, but in the early phase, even the early phase of human history, gathering information and passing to others. When appeared the writing, increased the speed of evolution, technology and social organization. Okay, but look at the landscape, the background of agrarianization. If we are looking at the background and appearance of agrarian practice, the first one, mountain and hill countries. It's defined the area above 600 meters. And very important because it's weaker, the vegetation, much easier not making a natural fortification, and very important the symbiosis between peasant and herders. Look at the Bible, Cain and Abel, the conflict between Cain. Cain is a peasant. It's a plant farmer, and Abel was a shepherd. And the conflict between shepherd and the peasant, it's quite general, but there is a symbiosis between them. And historical landscape, other historical landscape, river, lake and seaside, water and the fishes, it's natural resource. Very important traveling and trade. A great civilization, majority of great civilization appear around the 30 latitude. There is a very important and seminal theory of Wittfogel, Australian ecologist, a hydraulic civilization. Why so important? Look at the Mesopotamia, look at the Egypt. The common effort was making channels and organize irrigation, even in China. Therefore, it's named a hydraulic societies. And Meshenev, a Russian historian, separated a human history according to river, sea, and ocean-oriented civilization. Egypt was a typical river-oriented civilization. Roman Empire, a Mediterranean sea-oriented civilization. And finally, the British Empire was the ocean-oriented civilization. And the last one, steppe and savanna area. In the savanna area appeared the nomadism, a regular grazing land using in Eurasia and Africa and Arabian Peninsula. And the last one, the forest area, a great forest civilization, a Celtic people, a German and a Slavic people. Okay, look at the domestication, look at the process of domestication. The first domesticated plants, it's happened in the fertile questions, Mesopotamia and the Nile valleys, wheat and barley. Very interesting, wheat and barley, which domesticated are suicide plants. Why? Because each of them, the seeds closed by pike, you know, pike, it's closed the seed. And the mutation, in the evolution, it's a mutation, is a chaotic mutation. Each different plants appear in the history of evolution. But the humans selected wheat and barley, which even on the time of ripening, don't open the pike. Don't open the pike. It's a suicide version of the plants. But for the human community, it's very useful because cut down the plant and bringing it home. And even the pike don't open. Therefore, if we are looking at human civilization on the evolutionary backpack, majority of plants and animals without human activity not able to exist. Therefore, between the humans and the plants, between the animals and the plants, there is a symbiosis. A human selected and later breed this kind of plants not able to live without human activities. And recently, the DNA manipulation moved to higher level, the symbiosis. Moreover, increased the speed of the process of breeding. The first domesticated animals are sheep and the goat. My question, why selected sheep and goat? Because the cow and the cattle much larger, much more milk or meat. Why selected these animals? Cheers. Idea?
They are more friendly, they are so
smaller, very important. You work together, some kind of animals. Which animals? No animals. But for example, during my childhood, I worked together with the cattle and with horses. And for example, there is a conflict with the horse or the cattle or the bulls. It's unbelievable dangerous. For example, there is a sign of the herd of bull which pushed with the horn to my face. It's very dangerous, very dangerous. But a sheep, it's so small and friendly. Therefore, one of the most important factor of selection was a small animal, no dangerous animal. Okay, which animal? Instinct of herd, instinct of community, live together, much easier to guarding one place to other. In the sheep, very strong, the instinct of herd, instinct of community. In the case of goat, not so strong, but exists the instinct. And therefore, the shepherd, according to evolutionary experiences, kill the head back. Therefore, the evolutionary position of the shepherd replaced the head back. And the herd follow him or her. Okay. Good. If we are looking the history of evolutionary history of humankind, as I mentioned at the beginning of today's lecture, agricultural revolution, according to Gordon Chad, is Australian, British archaeologist, urban revolution, and industrial revolution. If you're interested for this literature, you can see the most important books, historical books of Gordon Chad. Okay, but for agrarian revolution, for agrarianization, had to pay very high price. Why? Look at the first. The diet became monotonous. On the time of hunting, gathering, walking on the forest, walking on the plain area, and gathering everything and hunting the animals. Therefore, the diets of hunter-gatherer, it's very changeable, very, very large. But look at the agrarian community based on cereals, wheat, barley, and rye, but basically cereals. Sedentary lives increase the susceptibility for disease. Why? Because settled down and live together more hundred and more thousand people. If somebody infected, distributed the infection very quickly. In consequence, sedentary life increased the fertility, but increased the mortality too. Increased the fertility because the carrying capacity of agriculture 50-fold higher, but the local people depend on the effectivity of agriculture. It's in the time of bad harvest, the underfeeding. You know, there are two kinds of underfeeding. Qualitative underfeeding, not enough vitamin, nutrition, and the fine trace element, and there is a quantitative underfeeding, not enough calorie. But in the case of agrarian society, both of these underfeeding might happen. Human lives then became briefer and the bodies shorter. Very interesting. Look at, for example, I can take example from the Hungarian and the international history. Okay, look at international gathering, hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers, before Industrial Revolution, had some archaeological reconstruction, changed around 175 centimeters, a male. On the Egyptian civilization, which was the classical agrarian empire, the general size of men, 160 centimeters. Much smaller. Why? A qualitative underfeeding. The meals and the feeding based on cereals. Not enough milk, not enough meat, not enough vegetables. But recently, for example, in Hungary, at the end of 20th century, the general size of male, 172 centimeters. More or less the hunter-gatherers. Because the feeding more larger, more complex, compared with the like of area of Egypt. But look at the Hungarian history. A Hungarian conqueror, when conquered a Hungarian Carpathian Basin, recent country of Hungarians, lived according to nomadic lifestyle. Drove animals, sheep, cattle, and rode on the horse, and the feeding system is quite complex. Milk, meat, and vegetables. And the size of human 1,000 years ago, when conquered the Carpathian Basin, was 172 centimeters. Similarly. But look at, for example, the 18th century. 18th century increased the population of Carpathian Basin after the age of Turkish wars, increased the population. And this was the first century when made official census for recruitation to the army. And the Hungarian male population average size was 120 centimeters, like in Egypt. Why? Because the diet based to cereals. And for example, there is a prejudice in Europe anyway for the Asian people, Chinese people. The Chinese people is a small one, short people. It's not true. Look at, for example, Guinness record book. Tallest man, whole of the humankind, Chinese. But the Chinese civilization based to rice. There is a general mention. One people enough one palm's quantity of rice for survival in China anyway. Therefore, in the Chinese civilization, generation by generation, the generations became shorter and shorter. But recently, in the modern time, when even the Chinese society stepped to the mass consummation, age of mass consummation, generation by generation, Chinese people taller and taller and taller. Because the genetical potential for growing, it's improved. But very important, DNA analysis verified that memory of famine and the memories of underfeeding save the generation after. Therefore, for example, in my body, in my DNA, there is feeding experiences of my grandmother and grandfather. It's very important. Okay, nostalgia for the lost paradise of pre-agrarian area. Not by chance, look at the Bible, a story of the Jewish people. There is a memory of losing paradise. This is the same in the Gilgamesh epoch, epos in Mesopotamia. The same story in the heritage, in the poetic heritage of Egypt. The losing paradise. Why? Because even the Kalahari Desert was enough 2 days. In much better physical environment, much shorter, 1 day or half day was enough for making survival. And the people's life, like a Garden Eden, walking and pick one apple and peach and walking only. No working, no working. Compared with the agrarian society, 6 days work and only 1 day recovery. In the hunting gathering, majority only relax, to be relaxed. And pollution, water and air, because a large community live together. And finally, hierarchical society, priests and warriors. And priests and warriors independent for primary production. Priests are a little bit more useful because the priests organized, look at the history of Egypt, agrarian work. Therefore, the priest we can name resource manager, because they organize time of sowing, time of plowing, time of harvest, and introduce how the name is fasting. You know which is the fasting period, when have to decrease the level of consumption diets. Not cancelling all of the diet, but decrease and missing the meat on the fasting period. And for I don't know which is the Ramadan in the case of Muslim tradition, but for example in the Christian tradition, the longest fasting period, early spring period. Why? Because during the traditional society, the technology of conservation of meals quite moderate. Therefore, the long winter period, very great the danger that the local people use and ate majority of food. And the stock not enough for survival. Therefore, the fasting period, not only the lifestyle for open the spiritual view, but saving resources. For May, when start the vegetation and there is alternative other meals for and foods for survival. Warriors much dangerous because with appearance of warriors started the taming of society and specialization of violence. Because look at, for example, I spent my childhood in a small village, and I remember that during my childhood in the male community, it's a boys community, necessary to define the rank list. Who is the strongest one, the second and the third, and so and so. But I have no chance for a well-trained commandos or soldier or warriors. Okay, this is the demonstration of that. In the size of post-glacial hunter, it's a little bit higher in the case of man, but agricultural in Egypt, the man is 160 and the woman 6 centimeters shorter. Very important when appear the civilization to define a form of control. Because if we are looking at a civilization, very important and driving force, a control. Control of everything. This is the most important pillars of state, formation of the state. Norbert Elias, very famous British historian, published Triad of Control theory. 3 forms of control he defined, which were the precondition of civilization. The first one, extra-human control. It means a physical environment. Look at, for example, a civilization checking and controlling physical environment of society. Very interesting. Once I traveled from Germany to Switzerland, and with my wife we discussed, but no real boundary, boundary control between Germany and Switzerland, but we discussed if we are able to realize its landscape of Switzerland or landscape of Germany. Because in Germany, well-regulated landscape. But very interesting, when we arrived to Switzerland, we was able to realize more regulated physical environment. And I have a French friend who when arrived to the area of Switzerland, and the paper is launched from the car because it's 100% that 1 hour later service of cleaning will appear and picking the waste even around the highway. Okay, but controlling the physical landscape in the civilization means checking, controlling and regulating of physical environment. Interhuman process. Interhuman process means relation between the citizens in the society. Direct with the rights, with the legal system, which may or which may not between the relation citizens. And finally, intrahuman control. You have idea what means the intrahuman control?
Different norms, how we
The norms and the mentality is interhuman.
It's about our own control.
Each state would like to know which think the citizens. It's not a modern innovation. Even the Sumerian or Egyptian society or early Chinese society used spies, used secret service, because would like to know the thought of the citizens. It's very interesting. These are the triad of control. Each society, the old dynasty of Egypt to the modern United States, use the triad of control. Physical environment, relation between humans and the brain. The brain police, as mentioned by George Orwell. Okay, probably the first agricultural process appeared 12,000 years ago in the fertile question, northern peripheral area of Mesopotamia and the Sinai Peninsula and area of Nile valleys. Okay, we arrive. We are over agricultural revolution. Look at the urban revolution. Okay, which is the preconditions? Which are the preconditions of urban revolution? The first one, domestication. We are over domesticated animals and domesticated plants. But I have one question concerning the domestication. The cradle of humankind is Africa. My question: why didn't domesticated the sub-Saharan African animals? No animals which domesticated from sub-Saharan Africa. Why? Majority of domesticated animals came from Near East, Nile valleys and Mesopotamia, and some, for example, horse domesticated in Central Asia, but no domesticated animals from the sub-Saharan Africa. No animals which able for domestication. Look at, for example, hippopotamus. You know the hippopotamus? It's a quite huge quantity of meat, but very dangerous. Very dangerous. For example, during the Second World War, only 2 animals survived in Budapest Zoo. Camel, why? Because able survived everything, and hippopotamus. And one hippopotamus. If we are looking at the animal accident in Africa recently, the people killed the highest proportion hippopotamus. Very dangerous, very aggressive animals, more than lions. Why? Because 50 meters, very quick. It's a short distance killer, but nobody knows about. Okay, hippopotamus not able, not good for domestication. Or look at gnu, you know gnu. It's a deer-like animal. And look, you know which is the speed of gnu? 60 kilometers per hour. 60 kilo, able to jump 3 meters. Not ideal for domestication. Look at, for example, a shepherd. It's a cattle, much moderate speed. Therefore, from the sub-Saharan Africa, no optimal animals for domestication. Okay, domestication. Simple tools for energy conversion, wheel and sail. Wheel and sail. Solar calendar, very important for agrarian activity, organized sowing, plowing and harvesting, and metalworking. Copper Age and later Bronze Age, and recently we are living in the Iron Age. Okay, the first city, the first real city which can picking information, even the Bible, Jericho. Jericho located between the Dead Sea and the Jordan valleys. This was the first city, first real city, but recently founded a contemporary city in Anatolia, in Turkey, Kataluyuk. It's possible you listen its name. In the same area appear the cities. In the case of Jericho, live together 3,000 people. 3,000 people. Compare with the community of Gader community, 40 to 60. 3,000, it's a large city compared with the small hunting gathering community. But the first, okay, before the analyzing of urban revolution, very important, define what means the city, how we can define the city. In the historical definition making used a protocol. Like, for example, a hospital. You have a stomach ache, walk to the hospital, and there is a protocol for judging which direction you have to move. For example, blood test, fever test, and so on. So a little bit same the protocol of definition of history. The first, because history, this is the discipline of time. Look at the contemporaries. A lot of historical time existed cities. And how define the contemporaries in the Middle Ages, in the Antiquity, the city. Look at this example. Probably you know the name of St. Augustine. St. Augustine was the first father of early Christian church. He socialized in the late Antiquity, but he was a precursor of Middle Ages. Definition of St. Augustine is a very clever definition. City is where forum is kept. What means the forum? It's a political community of citizens, elect the mayor, elect the council, city council, a political autonomy and the political activity. And the forum means economic activity. A forum, this is a market, a local market. And finally, a cultural activity. Because on the market street and the market square, organize, for example, theater event. Look at, for example, English history. In London, even the Middle Ages, organize a public theater. Some people organize a theater community and perform, make a performance, and survive until now. Do you know the team of Monty Python? Monty Python? Nobody knows? Okay, I suggest to you to see in YouTube. It's a street theater community. And finally, they made a movies. Even, for example, my favorite is The Life of Brian. Nobody knows Life of Brian. It's prohibited in the 70s because the story of Life of Brian, some baby was born in the stable beside Jesus. And the Life of Brian, it's unfolding beside Jesus, beside it's a very, very, very interesting and very special reflection to the history of Christendom, to the perspective of British humor. It's very, very good movie. I suggest for you, for free time, entertainment. Okay, political, economic, and cultural, core area and center. And there is a Hungarian lawyer, István Verbőci, collected the custom law. You know which is the custom law. The custom law is the practical law which used in the traditional society. Not by chance, in the traditional society, the strongest one is the custom law. A custom law. A custom law, generally no written version. A custom law, but everybody know which is the normal behavior. And lawyer Verbőci collected the custom law. Custom law much stronger than the written royal law, much stronger than the law of the church, everything, compared with every system. And very interesting, if we are looking at the modern society, there are traditional cells in the modern society. And in the modern community, the custom law, there is a conflict with the written law. The custom law is a stronger one. Look at, for example, probably you know the name of mafia. Mafia. It's clandestine organization of Sicily. Basically, when founded the mafia, it was a political organization for independence of Sicily. But later, a little bit turned to the direction of drug and prostitution and so and so. But a mafia, it's a classical cell of traditional community and function according to custom law, inner custom law. Probably you know the term of omerta. Omerta, this is the right of silence. Right of silence. Right of silence, a typical custom law. Right of silence, omerta, it's a Sicilian dialect Italian language. Omerta means a member of our community, a traditional community, never communicate employees of political power. Policeman or officer or official lawyer. No communication. If somebody break or broken the omerta, will kill everybody. Therefore, the custom law is very, very strong in the traditional world and recently in the traditional community. Okay, where do you see defined the concept of city? Houses surrounded with necessary walls. Generally, if we are walking in the traditional landscape, city walls indicate the urban status. Very interesting. Generally it's true, but some period, like for example in England, when England conquered Wales, not conquered, it's make alliance with Scotland and conquered Ireland, not necessary to make a wars and save a lot of money. Because if we are looking the budget of city, 80 to 90% of budget of city used for construction and reconstruction of wall and gardening of wall. Therefore, this is one reason of industrial revolution in England. Because Ireland first, secondly pacified the Celtic people living in the British Isles, save a lot of money for cancelling the walls. But generally it's true, wall and city connected to each other. Houses surrounded with necessary walls, and on the honest living there is privileged. Privileged status means exceptional status, but its privileged status means exceptional status. Why important exceptional status? Because if we are looking at feudalism, a feudalism organized around the estate, around the estate, because relation to the estate. Everybody knows which is the estate. This is the landscape on the ownership of the lords and using of the peasant estate. But artisans and the businessmen and intellectuals no any relation to the estate. Therefore, a feudal right and feudal law used exceptional community. Okay. Wall and exceptional status, according to contemporaries. It's a forum, according to St. Augustine. This is the central area of political, economic, and cultural life. Was separate from environment, and in the legal system, exceptional status. Okay, first of the protocol, we look what told about the urban status by contemporaries. The second one, look at the other disciplines. A geography, like a history, try to define the concept of city. Geography, the first element of the geography definition, the settlement, one taking advantage for positional energy the most intensively. Look at, for example, Szeged. If we are looking at the Szeged, which are the geographical energy? The first geographical energy, the river, the Tisza river. But not only one river, but this Szeged, there are two rivers. Two rivers. This is the Szeged, and arrive on Tisza river here. But on the boundary of city, there is one other river. It's named Moros, came from Transylvania. Transylvania is one province of Romania recently. It's a large area, same size more or less than recent Hungary. It's a large area. Therefore, not only the Tisza River is a geographical energy, but the Moros connect to the trade and the industrial production to the Transylvanian area. Moreover, in the traditional time, when no bridges on the river, the traditional people knew which is the ideal geographical position going through the river. Why? Because no bridges. We have to use the knowledges about the rivers. In the rivers, which part the quickest, the speed of water? In the core area. Of course, in the core area. But here, a river is turning. Therefore, in consequence of how the name is Coriolis work, the speediest area moved to the direction of banks and reflect from the banks. This is the quickest part. This is the speed line on the river. You can follow, I hope. Anyway, therefore, in this area, when the farthest the position of the speeding line, decrease the speed of river and increase the sedimental area. This part of the bank, river, southern, not southern, it's a left part of the this side's named slope area. It's a Lapos. It's a slope area. Therefore, in the traditional time, the people knew that try to going through the river, this is the good place. Why? Because walking on the water, there is a quite shallow, not so deep, the water, and necessary to swim only in this part, very close to the bank. If somebody try to swimming on the water, on the river, the most dangerous if the current, the speed current of river, it's reach very far the banks. Because lost the consciousness, it's panicked and not able orienting good direction. This is the best place. This is the old bridge. Recently, this place constructed the old bridge of the Reiter, of course, in the 19th and 20th century, but this was the traditional crossing routes. This is the geographical energies. Tisza River, good place, cross to the river and connect to the other provinces, to Transylvania. City and the region. Normal situation, if you go, for example, market, food market of Szeged, majority of the people who selling different products came from the region. Therefore, if we would like to define the city, no unique city. City and the region which connect to the city. And very interesting, the nature of Szeged. I returned to the Szeged. I had a sociologist student who elaborated the mayor of Szeged and the member of city council. And very interesting, in the last, after the political change, after the political system change, no Hungarian mayor, no mayor of Szeged who was born in Szeged. And no any member of city council who were born in Szeged. Why? Because recently the Szeged, this city, is the third city of Hungary. Therefore, the people who were born in Szeged moved to the Budapest. Therefore, this city is a transit city. The people is crossing through the city. The people who socialized here, after some years, not enough large, and left the city. Therefore, the most important political actor of this city came from smaller cities and villages of Hungarian plain. Okay, city and the region, and the function. Political, three groups of the function we can separate: political and administrative function, economic and cultural and medical. Generally, each city had a lot of different functions, but we can find one functional cities. Look at, for example, Oxford or Cambridge or St. Andrews. It's a British example. Only one function: education, no more. In the Hungarian history had a similar Sáros, only education. It's quite a general, universal types. Okay, look at the history. How we can define the history with historical experiences on the time. I used one definition from Cambridge Economic History. Cambridge Economic History is an economic history series, and try to define whole of the human history from Egypt or dynasty to recent time. And if we are looking at the definition, there are two techniques and technology of definition. The first technology of definition, like in the case of István Bergőci, snake of sentence, lot of long sentence. And I prefer this kind of definition based to criteria. Look at these criteria. If it's function, it's good. If not, it's not good. Cambridge Economic History defined a city with help of 5 criteria. The first one, high number and high density of population. Generally, it's true. The cities, it's a higher number and higher density of population. But historical time and region very different. Look at, for example, Norway. Somebody visited in Norway? Not? It's a very interesting country. A little bit depressive, but mainly during the winter time. But richest country, whole of the Europe. Somebody know why? Because Norwegian history is very thorough, very thorough, very peripheral area, good Viking period, but later occupied partly by Denmark, partly by Sweden. Denmark, Sweden, Denmark, Sweden. But finally, the god decided to compensate the Norwegians and found so much fossil fuel in the Norwegian Sea, gasoline and gas and others, that recently the budget of Norway is unbelievable. Therefore, a poor people for Norwegian people, the Swedish, it's a poor people. Compare with our perspective, not understandable for that. But historically it was a poor country. And in Norway, the minimal level of city status, 200 inhabitants. Very small country. Therefore, even 200 people living together may ask the city status. And the second criterion, the distance between two buildings no more than 200 meters. If you will visit in Oslo, capital of Norway, it's the greenest capital whole of the world. And during the winter time, quite a typical, my Norwegian colleagues told to me, deers, reindeers, you know, walking to the downtown. Because the reindeers not able to realize it's a city yet, because the large parks, it's connected one to other, not realize that this animal, it's an urban area. Okay, it's generally true High number and high density of population, but criteria is changeable. Population determining part, not primary producer, not a peasant, not a peasant. Generally true, but we can find some exception. Look at, for example, in the Hungarian history. In the Hungarian history exists some special status of city and wine production, because the grape planting and wine production make enough capital to the city status. Because wine is a current product. And in the German history, the beer brewing played the same role. It's financed some low-rank city status. Differentiated society, generally true, two sense. It's a lot of different artisan working in the city, and there is a differentiated society according to social status. From the mayor, aristocrats, citizens, to the beggars. It's a ladder of society. Region. I spoke about the region. We cannot define the city without region, but not so easy to define the region. Because if we are looking, for example, Paris, and it's possible, I told you this example, in the 17th century had a global bad harvest and famine whole of the Europe. Therefore, had to import grain from different part of visible part of the neighborhood. And in Paris, this is the age of King of Sun, it's Louis XIV, organized the cereal and the grain import to Paris from Normandy. And 100 kilogram of wheat which transported from Normandy to Paris by coach, you know which is the coach, it's drove by horses, 160 livre mean a contemporary currency. 100 kilogram grain, wheat mainly, 160 livres from Normandy to Paris. On the same time, was a problem with the grain supply in Amsterdam, capital of the Netherlands, and imported rice from South Africa. In South Africa, made a colony of Dutch people. It's named Afrikaans or Boer people. From Cape Town to Amsterdam, more thousand kilometers distance. And the expense of transport from Cape Town to Amsterdam was 50 livre per 100 kilogram rice. If we are looking the expense of transport, Cape Town much closer to Amsterdam than Normandy to Paris. Therefore, defining the region not so easy job. Not only the real distance mean, because why? Because a fleet of Dutch Republic much efficient and much cheaper was able to transport rice from Cape Town. Okay, region not easy to define because according to expense of the travel, Normandy much farther compared with the Cape Town. And fortification. I spoke about the fortification, generally true, like István Verbőci defined, wall. But sometimes and some periods not necessary constructed walls. Okay, thanks a lot for your attention.